So, as I said, I'm Sonia Gill. I'm the founder and director of Heads Up. And at Heads Up, we specialise in helping primary schools move to outstanding by creating an outstanding culture. We do this using 3 key strategies, one of which is all about having difficult conversations successfully. Now, the ability to have difficult conversations successfully is actually a key feature of high-performing teams. It's something you'll find they're really good at, they're really natural at. I also think difficult conversations are, well, let's face it, they're a daily part of life as a leader, in schools and in other leadership situations. And I'm very familiar with schools. Not only do I work with them now, but I am a qualified teacher. I was trained in junior actually, but I've taught everything from reception to 16. And I was also recruited onto the John Lewis Leadership Programme, which was all about developing their leaders and creating high-performing teams. And I remember the very first difficult conversation I ever had. It was a really lovely lady in our team who really wanted to impress, delight, please her bosses. So quite a nice person to have on your team, really. And whilst this was a really nice trait, she was almost too competitive and too obsessive with it. And this got so bad that one time when a customer complained, she actually followed that customer through the store and had a go at them. Didn't really help matters. So needed to give her some feedback, needed to talk to her about these behaviours. And I had her mid-year review. I was the one who was going to do this. And I can say with absolute confidence that at the end of our meeting, she was none the wiser. I danced around the message, I softened it, I made it unrecognisable. And this was really unfair of me because she really wanted to improve. She wanted to know how, she wanted to please her managers, and I didn't tell her. I made the biggest mistake that I now see made in any difficult conversation. And that was quite a few years ago, and I knew if I was going to be any good at leadership, if I was going to have any success in John Lewis, I needed to get good at this leadership skill. So I developed my skills, I practiced, I tried, I made mistakes, as we all do, until I was able to deliver very tough messages to members of the team, messages that were even essentially saying, you know, you're lazy, you're a bit cocky. And I think the toughest ones where you're actually talking to someone about your working relationship and how it's not as good as it could be. Now I've worked with hundreds of school leaders in helping them have more successful, difficult conversations, and I've seen probably thousands of difficult conversations. And I'm really proud that actually of all of those people we've trained, every single one recommends the training. And what I want to share with you today is how you can avoid, well, firstly, know and avoid the biggest mistake made by school leaders. I hope that this is going to enable you to improve your difficult conversations, whoever you have them with. I hope it's going to help you do that because it's going to help you avoid this mistake, which I want to share with you. And it's honestly, it's the single biggest mistake I see when people are having difficult conversations. So what I'm going to cover in this webinar is the 3 components of a successful, difficult conversation. The single biggest mistake, examples of what this actually looks like, because I think this mistake is quite deceptive. You think you've avoided it when actually you haven't. So I want to give some examples so you're really clear about what that looks like. I'm going to also talk to you about how you can avoid it. And all of this is one small part of everything I could tell you on successful, difficult conversations. I mean, we run training courses over the course of a school year. They're 5 days. So this is one little nugget. I like to think it's a really good nugget and it's going to be really usable and really applicable to you straight away. However, what I'm going to do at the end of the webinar is, if you're interested in how we support schools have more successful, difficult conversations, is I'm just going to tell you about how we can support you further if that's of use to you. So let's get cracking. What is a successful difficult conversation? Well, for me, it's a conversation that puts you on the path to resolving the issue and creating positive change. I say on the path because it's not always the case in the first conversation you will resolve the issue fully. Sometimes it takes a few and you're monitoring and checking and seeing progress happen. I think of difficult conversations being a situation today, a point we're at that perhaps has progressed, and potentially we're walking towards a negative future if we don't do anything. Now, that negative future might be potentially going into capability with a member of staff. It could be, inadequate teaching for a class of children. It could be a whole range of things. And when we're having a difficult conversation, we're actually trying to flip over to a more positive future. Now, how big the gap is depends how far down the path we are. It's part of the reason I always say have that difficult conversation as early as you can. You're more likely to avoid capability. The impact of whatever the problem is going to be less. There's going to be a lot less stress for you and the other person as well. And I know they're hard. I don't forget that for one moment. I do believe I practice what I preach, and I have difficult conversations when they're needed. But I still get anxiety. I still get those butterflies in my stomach, those nerves beforehand. And I know a lot of heads and school leaders have kind of, slightly embarrassingly confessed to me that, actually, Sonia, I should have had this conversation 3 years ago. And, we're all human. It's really normal. The fact is, if you're having them, even if it feels like you're having them too late, you're still standing a chance of moving on to that correct path, that better path. So the 3 components that you need if your difficult conversation is going to be successful are that you build trust, you manage emotions, and you structure your conversation. You're trying to get to this little spot in the middle. That's kind of like the sweet spot. And it is small. I know it's small. But most difficult conversations, sadly, don't go well. And that's because these 3 variables aren't in place. So let's just look at that for a moment. Imagine you build trust, you manage the emotions, but you don't structure the conversation. Well, if you've ever had a conversation where you felt like the other person didn't get your message, didn't understand what you were trying to say, the chances are structure was the missing element for you. But what if you have structure and you build trust, but you don't manage the emotions? Well, to be honest, this is exhausting. Now, I don't know about you. I know a lot of people who have rehearsed the conversation before they've gone in. The conversation itself may have been particularly emotive. People getting upset, people getting angry. And then afterwards, I know I've been guilty of this. You relive, you replay, you reinvent the conversation. Even though you know how it went, you kind of catch yourself working through it again as if you had another chance, when actually it's been and gone. I think emotional energy is the most exhausting kind of energy. And certainly as leaders, one of the things I think is really important that you need to do is you need to conserve how much emotional energy is being spent, not by avoiding the difficult conversations, but learning how to manage that emotional aspect in yourself and in others. And then finally, you structure the conversation, you manage emotions, but you don't build trust. Well, how successful is any conversation going to be when you don't have trust in place? And if you've ever thought, yeah, do you know what, they said all the right things in that meeting, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to do any of them, then I would say that actually that was the element that was missing. So today, this key mistake fits into structure. It's one part of the things you need to do to make sure your conversation is well structured, but it's a really, really significant part. And it is the single biggest mistake I see when people are having a difficult conversation. It's not clearly stating what the issue is. Now, I know that sounds really simple. It sounds really basic, but I see it in, I'd say at least 50%. I think it's more like 70% of the hundreds of people I've trained. And this is when I've told them as well. I don't hold this back and let them fall into the mistake and go, haha, because I told you that was going to happen. I tell them up front. I labour it like I am now. This is the biggest mistake I see. And in our last webinar, Emma Webster, who's an employment solicitor, a part-time tribunal judge, and also a school governor, so gets to see a lot of this stuff going on. She was talking about the 5 most common mistakes made when people are conducting capability. And this issue came up as one of the big ones, that actually people are too vague as they go into capability about what the problem is. Making this mistake decreases your chances of a successful, difficult conversation in several ways. Firstly, the person doesn't know what the problem is. Secondly, they don't know what they need to do to change. And finally, your conversation can get easily pulled off track, intentionally or unintentionally, and by either of you. It's not just the other person trying to kind of steer you off course. I've seen the person who's initiated the conversation put it off track because they're not so clear. And this problem has 2 subcomponents. The first is we're often not clear ourselves about what the problem is, not as clear as we need to be. And I think this is because normally by the time we've got enough in our heads to go, yeah, sure, I need to have a chat with someone about this, we've almost been thinking about it too much. And I think we're at the point where we can't see the wood for the trees. There's actually, to deal with this problem, there's an entire training day we do to help people overcome this, because it really is that significant an issue and that significant a block to people when having difficult conversations. The second is we don't tell the other person clearly. Now, you can probably see how those 2 things compound each other. If we're not clear ourselves, then how can we tell the other person what the issue is? I've seen it when people are very clear themselves, and even then they don't tell the other person very clearly what the problem is. So let's look at some examples, because like I said, I think this mistake is really deceptive. It sounds really simple to resolve, but actually I see it made many, many times. So this was an example from a deputy head talking to a year group leader, and she simply wanted the year group leader to lead better. Now, there are many ways you can think of, I'm sure, in which somebody could lead better. And I'm just going to give you a few moments just to think of some. And I think some of you are, you're there with colleagues. So chat to your colleague for a minute. We can't hear you. And if you want to, just type it in the chat box. Some of the ways that actually, right, how could somebody interpret that? You need to lead better. Just going to give you 15 seconds or so. And have a cup of tea. Okay, so there's more than you could probably think of. It might be that they need to start leading insets, that they need to be observing teachers in their year group more, that they need to be modelling teaching to others. There's so many ways in which a year group leader could lead better. And this is the problem with coming up, going into a difficult conversation, saying you need to lead better. So what I did with that deputy head is I said to her, look, what is it that's making you say they need to lead better? Well, in fact, what do you want them to do? What's going to be different when they are leading better? And then she got really clear. She said they need to submit their own planning on time. Yeah, submit their own planning on time. And they need to support the year group to improve their plans. Yeah, and Heather, thank you. Heather's just put another way somebody could lead better is, they need to listen and be aware of what's happening. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of you need to lead better. Specifically for this deputy head, it was all around planning. Submit your planning on time, lead by example, and support your year group in improving their plans. Yeah. Narrows it down. You need to lead better is too big. Here's another one, particularly emotive one. Deputy head talking to a teacher about support that she thought was agreed for a child and yet hadn't seen in place. And when she was talking to me, she said, look, I just think she's lying. She's telling me it's in place, but whenever I go into the classroom, it's not there. And obviously your lying is particularly emotive. So firstly, she had several examples of, okay, these different types of support were agreed. And when I've come in then, I've not seen it. And when I've spoken then, they've not been doing it. So, you know, what we've got are mixed messages, which is a softer way and a far more forgiving way of saying that what's being said and what's being seen are different. And I like to give someone the benefit of the doubt if I'm having a difficult conversation. And if you've got no concrete evidence that someone's lying, then you're going to start off the conversation in a pretty hard place. So mixed messages makes that a more palatable way of saying, yeah, you're saying one thing, but I'm seeing something else. So I'm getting mixed messages. And this is quite a nice little one. It was a teacher talking to a TA. Be on time to lessons. Now, on the surface, really nice and clear. Yeah. But we can make it clearer. Yeah, we can reduce the margin for error, because ideally with this kind of conversation, we want it to be a once off, problem resolved, never have to talk about it again because it's fine from there on, hopefully. So what is on time? When the lesson starts, before the lesson starts? Again, you can be really, really specific about it. So there's, you know, you're just reducing the level of incorrect interpretation. So I hope you can see how easy a mistake this is to make. And you might think during the conversation, the details will come out and, you know, that we'll get to the bottom of it. But actually, this is unfair on the other person, because I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a conversation where someone's kind of skirting around the issue and you're trying to figure out what they're saying and you don't know, it's really unfair. You're kind of running circles thinking, what is it? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? What do they want to say? Actually, just end that. Don't put them through the emotional energy and stress of it. And also don't risk don't increase the chance of your conversation being unsuccessful and not creating that positive change. So how do we fix it? So to avoid this mistake, as you probably guessed, we need to be clearer. And I use this structure. I issue the outcome. Now, you're probably looking at that and going, Sonia, you've got grammatical issues because you've got commas all over the place. But I just use the commas to separate the concepts and the components. So we start with I because it's far less accusatory than starting with you. Yeah. So I saw, I believe, I feel you're lying to me. I notice, I think you're lying to me. It's softer than saying you're lying to me. Yeah. The you still comes. It's a bit later. It helps depersonalize what the person's what you need to talk to them about. Secondly, tell them what the problem is. Yeah. And again, being as clear as possible. You know, you've been late to lessons several times. Don't feel like you're leading as well as you could. Yeah, or as well as we need. And then finally, tell them what you want to do differently. And sometimes this will mean you're repeating what the problem was. Yeah. But you've got to be really clear. If they were to come in tomorrow and fix what it was that's causing the problem, what would they be doing differently? What would they be doing? Now, extra tip for you, and I labour this when I'm training people and I still see it missing, that is people go, yep, I issue the outcome, and they miss off the outcome. Yeah, they don't put it in, they totally miss it out. So it's in red there because I want you to really remember, okay, people often miss out the outcome, so I'm going to make sure I use it, I deliver it. The other thing you need on top of this is you need some tangible examples of what you're talking about. So if you think someone's rude, but you can't think of any tangible examples, you can't talk about it. Yeah, if you think someone's not managing the behaviour in their class very well, if you don't have tangible examples, be it from yourself or from someone else, because I know sometimes people give us feedback that we have to act on. If you don't have those tangible examples, you can't have the conversation. It's a bit like going into a court of law and saying this person committed a crime. Okay, well, how do you know? Well, I don't, but they committed a crime. Well, what's your evidence? Well, I don't have any. I mean, it's just laughable, isn't it? You couldn't do it. So make sure you've got examples of what you're talking about. And if you don't have the conversation until you do. So now I want to apply that I issue the outcome to those 3 examples I gave you to see what a difference it makes. So the first one, you need to lead better, turns into, and this is my wording, I'm sure you can think of a few different ways of saying it, but I believe you need to show greater leadership in your year group, specifically in planning. I would like you to make sure all planning is in on time and to see you supporting your year group in producing higher quality plans which develop and support the children's learning. Okay, and I'm hoping you can see the difference using that structure makes. Gives a lot more detail and is very, very specific about what the issue is and how the person can solve it. And then a few examples there that you may or may not use, but you need to know you've got. They would say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And say, well, look, for the last 3 weeks, your planning has been late. And actually, when you and I looked at your year group's plans, we both saw ways in which they could lead to better quality first teaching. Let's look at your lying one, the emotive one. So that could turn into, I feel there are mixed messages between us because I haven't seen the agreed support for Jane put in place. And what I would like to see and be reassured of is that her individual reward chart and her break time book are used daily. Yeah, again, really specific. The problem is the agreed support, can't see it. And actually what I want to see are these 2 specific bits of agreed support in place. Yeah, and how often. And again, some examples there. And then finally, that one that is good, be on time to lessons. Now let's sharpen it up. So I've noticed you've been late to lessons several times over the last few weeks. And what I need is for you to be in class with me at 8:45 a.m, 10:55 a.m, and after lunch at 12:50 p.m. And again, some examples. And what we're doing is we're removing the ambiguity of what on time means. We're just being really, really explicit about it and saying, this is on time. So I hope that brings to life the difference clearly saying what the problem is makes. Because this is the biggest problem. We don't clearly say what the issue is. And we overcome it by using I issue the outcome with a few examples if we need them. I said earlier, I've seen thousands of, I'm sure it must be over 1,000 difficult conversations, trained hundreds of school leaders in how to have more successful difficult conversations. And when they use this opening structure, they always go well, always. And it breaks through so much. It breaks through so much of the existing issues because it just gets straight to the point and it's very clear with the other person what the problem is and what they need to do to fix it. And then you can have a really useful dialogue. So as I've said, difficult conversations, successful ones, have 3 components. Yeah, they build trust, manage emotions, and are well structured. Now, I've given you a piece of structure and how you do that. And like I said earlier, I do think it's a gem of a piece. If you can apply that, I think you'll see the success rate of your difficult conversations increase a lot very quickly. I've not talked about building trust and I've not talked about managing emotions because in these bite-sized webinars, there just isn't enough time, I'm afraid. I know difficult conversations are hard and I know they're not fun, but I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say it is a crucial leadership skill and getting them right pays dividends. And I've got many examples, many case studies that I can't go into now, but of where actually situations have been completely turned around in the best interests of all. And certainly my view is I'd like to avoid people getting into capability. I'd much rather see improvement. So if you're interested, I'd like to go on to tell you a bit about the training that we offer. Obviously, you don't have to stay online. You're free to go at any point. But, if you're somebody you dread difficult conversations, or you think, actually, I'd like to just increase how successful they are, then you might be interested to know about the training. And I have, for the first time, got some little bonuses, actually, if you decide to go ahead. I'll be honest, though. This is a skill and skill requires practice. So if you think, actually, I'm pretty good at this already, or it's just not a focus, it's not where I need to be developing myself at the moment, then it might not be so useful for you to listen about the training we offer. And, you're very welcome to stay. but equally, you know, you're all free to go at any time. And if you do go, can I just say thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. I realise you're giving up some of your time, and I know how busy schools are. So thank you for taking, you know, half an hour out to join us. And I hope that you can use the tips I've given today to make your difficult conversations more useful. For those of you who want to stay on, I'm going to tell you about our Successful Difficult Conversations course, in case that is useful to you. We offer a series of courses, and my aim here is to inform you about what we do on those and how it all works. The full course is 5 days. We do it over the course of an academic year. It's delivered in your school and in groups of 6 or multiples up of 6. We deliver it in your school because what we help create over the course of the year is, you know, you and the people you train with will become a really good support network for each other. And you also kind of get a bit of cheeky team building in on the side. So it's a really nice way to come in and do it with you in your environment. The aim of the course, and actually an aim I think we've been very successful in, is to let you to quickly and confidently resolve issues for good. I think a lot of the time those difficult conversations, like those little mole games you get at fairgrounds, you know, the mole pops up and you bash it down and it pops up somewhere else. And we think we've sorted a problem out and we think it's all done, and then it rears its ugly head again. And we think, oh, thought we'd been through this. So our aim is, as I say, resolve it quickly, confidently, and for good. I'm going to tell you about the whole course, but what I do want to say is you can buy them individually, or you can buy them, you know, as a whole series. I'll talk you through that more in a moment. So the first course is Successful Difficult Conversations, and this gives you those 3 skills that you need to have: the building trust, emotional management, and structuring the conversation. It's the single biggest step forward that I can give you on a training day. Yeah, and it does do a big chunk, a lot, you know, it's our most popular day, and everyone who's been on it, you know, loves it, raves about it, and recommends it. The next course is about being flexible in your leadership style. And this is so that when you're in the kind of the meat of the discussion of the conversation, you know what approach is going to most likely get you the best result. Yeah, create that positive change. So is it that actually they just need direction? I need to tell them what to do. Or is it that actually I need to adopt more of a coaching style? Yeah, we show you how to work out which is most likely to be best, and also what those different styles require from you. So it's really useful. It can really help actually get to a better solution than you otherwise might have. Then you get a day with our legal expert, and that's Emma Webster, who I mentioned earlier. Phenomenal background, phenomenal knowledge. And the reason we include this day is because a lot of people are often unsure as to, you know, what are the parameters they can work within. You know, we're often worried about overstepping a legal line. The other reason that we have this day is because often a lot of people aren't actually aware of the many ways in which the law supports you when dealing with, you know, if you've got a member of staff who isn't conducting themselves properly or who isn't performing properly. People are often unaware about how much support the law does give you as well in moving that situation forward. And like I say, hopefully not to capabilities, always what I'd like to avoid, but really important that you can act with confidence that you're not, you know, likely to end up in tribunal. Really, really powerful day. Fourth day is all about what I've been talking about today. It's how you get to the point, how you get clarity yourself in the issue, and various ways in which you can open that conversation so that you avoid that big mistake that people make. And then finally, by this point in the course, you know, you would have had a lot of experience, a lot of practice. You would have really developed your skills. And we kind of give you a tool bag of techniques that you can use if you ever get stuck in a difficult conversation. And that can happen very easily, sadly. So it's a range of ways in which you can think, okay, we're going around in circles now, or we've got an impasse. Right, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try this. Quick, easy methods that allow you to move the conversation forward in a useful way. And I keep telling you that people love the course, but I thought I'd just give you a few little quotes that people who've been on it, you know, what they've said about it. And this was Mr. Parr. He said, look, this was a professionally life-changing course. I couldn't rate it highly enough. It's been transformative for me and the rest of the SLT. And we've worked together over the course of a year. In fact, another professional from an outside agency, when he was dealing with a situation, said to Mr. Parr, do you know what? You're like Kofi Annan. You should be working for the UN as a peacekeeper, because he was just so good at managing these difficult conversations and difficult situations. Great value for him and his SLT, and it's just been a joy to see how far they've taken it and how far they've come with it. Mrs. Harris, an outstanding head teacher, she said, thank you. It's been a long time since I felt like I've really learned and developed a new skill. It made me realise that as a senior leader, when we're really not trained or always equipped to deal with the emotional side of the job. And I think a lot of people, I've spoken to certainly feel that way. So the course costs, on average, about £1,500 for each day. So it worked out about £225 per person, and the full course is £7,100. And I said, everyone who's ever done it has recommended it. In fact, I was training some people last week, and one of the ladies had been on several courses to develop this skill, and she just said, you know what, this is by far the best that I've been on. Everything is so usable, so applicable. I wish I'd just done this one first, and that would have done me. So you can see there the price of the course, and I do think it's worth I always think myself, whenever I'm looking at investing some money in my own development, what's the cost of not doing it? And I think with difficult conversations, certainly what I see is the amount of time and the drain on energy that these issues cause for our school leaders, to be honest. Time and energy that you could actually spend on other things. Now, I know that this course is successful. I've seen it work hundreds of times, and I know it will help you free up that time and energy, because you'll develop this skill, you'll master it if you do the full course. It will make these difficult issues start to disappear as you resolve them and manage the ones going forwards. Now, I did say I've got a few little bonuses for you, and this is for people who book the full course. I love this training. It is surprisingly good fun. There's a lot of laughter, good laughter, not bad laughter on the course. And it's an absolute delight to see how this tricky landscape actually becomes a lot easier to navigate once you've learned the skills. But because demand for our services are increasing, I reluctantly can't train as much as I do. Seriously, I love this training. It's just such good fun and has such an impact, but I can't train the amount that I have been training in the past. So I will personally deliver the full course for 5 schools. And that's because, as I say, I do love this training, and I want to work with a small number of schools who really want to improve their skills. Now, if you decide you'd like a day, or you want to do a day at a time and build up towards it, then you'll get one of my fantastic trainers. They are brilliant, and you won't be hard done by, I promise. But if you book the full course, I will deliver that training myself. Because I want to see your skills develop, I'm also going to give you for free 2 half-day implementation support sessions, and they're worth they're worth over £1,000, because that lets me, as I'm working with you over the course of 5 training days, it lets me just give you a little bit extra where you need it, bring something new in if I think it's going to be useful to you, really hone and refine your skills and make sure you're getting the most from those training days. And then finally, because I know where we are in the financial year, you can split the payment over this financial year and the next that starts in April. Now, if you want those bonuses, I am going to have to ask you to book the full course by the 1st of December. Yeah, so as you let us know you want to do it, we'll send you the invoice, we'll start sorting out all the dates, and all of that stuff will start to happen. And the reason being is that, as I say, I can only give up so much time to this training with the demands on Heads Up at the moment and how it's increased. And so we need to do our resource planning. So I need to know if you want to do it before the 1st of December so that it fits in with our planning schedule. I'm so confident with how good this course is. Like some of our other courses, you get a satisfaction guarantee, because I know that if you learn and implement everything that I teach you, you will be successful at having difficult conversations. I've just seen it work too many times. In fact, I've seen it work every time. For those who apply it, that's your side of the deal. So if after the first 3 days you're not happy with the training, for whatever reason, we'll give you a full refund. And as much as I've been telling you how good the training is and how everybody loves it, if you want to contact a school leader who has had the training to hear from them what they think about it, yeah, then just let me know and I'll give you their details. That's how confident I am that this makes a difference. And like I say, it's just because I've seen it. It's not based on a whim. I've just seen it hundreds of times. So this is what you need to do if you want to book any of the training. And this is if you want to book a day or you want to book a full course, you need to contact my PA, Kay, and there's her email, kay@ukheadsup.com, and just let her know. Just say, look, I'd like to book the first day, I'd like to put I'd like to put the course, I'd like to take advantage of the bonuses. As long as you're one of the first 5, then those bonuses are all yours. Okay. And I hope you do. I hope you do, because it really, I know it will help you and I know it will support you. So I hope you decide to let me support you develop this skill, and that you get to see the benefits that it will give to you. That's all I'm going to cover. I'd like to say thank you again so much for joining me today. I hope you found it useful. I hope you apply that I issue the outcome, and I hope you decide to at least do the first day's training, because you'll get a lot of benefit from that. And actually, I hope you decide to do the full course, and then we can work together in developing those skills for successful, difficult conversations with you. I'm going to stay online now, so if any of you want to pop me a question or ask me anything, then please feel free to. I'm just going to hang around here for 5 minutes, and hopefully somebody will ask me something. If not, can I just say I hope you have a lovely, lovely evening, and thanks so much for joining me.